Hi, Tony Selzo here. Welcome to Zipline. Now, every once in a while, I get to have one of the best subject matter experts in our very unique space right here on the show on the Zipline. And what we've got is a special treat. Future Point of View CEO Scott Klososky is on our show today. And I know I didn't do your name justice, Scott, but your unique background of taking multiple technology companies to market in order to help them evolve their value proposition, understand that feedback loop, that proof of concept, find the funding. I mean, this is a unique game. There aren't a lot of players in this, and you're one of the best guys in this space in the entire nation. I did your lookup. I've kind of did my research. Scott, what got you in this crazy game?
Well, I guess I didn't feel like I was a fit to work for other people. I don't know. When I was young, I taught myself technology. Mm-hmm. So I started at 18 years old, back when PCs were brand new.
Wow. And
taught myself how to program and taught myself how to build computers. Wow. And kind of worked my way up through a company for about 7 years, right? And I never went to college. So here I was, 25 years old, and I was really good, at that time with PCs and coding. And I ended up buying the computer division away from the company I worked for as my own company.
Oh, wow.
And so that was really kind of my first foray into doing a startup. And, that was the kind of situation where you go and borrow all the money and buy something and, put your house up and all that kind of thing. And so that's where it all started. And I fell in love with it right there. And so I built that company up for a few years and then that was really selling PCs. So we were in the hardware business. But the next thing that I did was really in the software space.
Wow.
And I fell probably even more in love when it was software.
Right.
And so from that point forward, it's just been a constant stream of, starting software companies, building them up for 3 to 5 years, selling them, and then starting another one.
What was, when you were doing that your first baby, and you leverage everything you had. I mean, I remember we started my first company with $500 out of my checking account, right? And we built that in a couple $1 million. And when you do that your first baby, it's like your firstborn. When you decided to move on from that and do it again, what was it? What was the gear that kicked in your head that said, "Hey, I'm not a one-hit wonder. I can do this over"?
Wow. Well, look, you need to understand a little bit of context. So the first thing that I built, we built from zero up to doing like a run rate of 30 million a year. Wow. And then we went over the top and came back down, and I ended up having to take it through bankruptcy took it all through Chapter 11 and then sold off the pieces. So, my first, foray was, great on one hand. It was also horrible on another hand because I got to go through bankruptcy and see how much fun that was.
Right.
And so that experience is great for a lot of reasons. When you go all the way up and then all the way back down, you get the excitement of seeing what's possible. And then you get the experience of understanding what the consequences are when you make mistakes because, it was my fault.
Right.
There's no one else I could blame. I made moves I probably shouldn't have made, that caused us to grow too fast and take on too much debt.
Right.
But when that was done, or I suppose even before that was all done, I really had the bug for the fact that you could build your own company.
Right.
And so, I didn't want to build it in hardware anymore. So I immediately started thinking about software. And, and crazy enough, that second company was one I built in the Soviet Union. So, not only did I switch over to software, I built it in the Soviet Union for 3-4 years, which was an incredibly interesting experience.
I want to hear about that, but I want to make sure our listeners really understand the power of what you just said and the credentialing that it brings you. We failed. We raised $2.5 million, had a 2-year run, and we're working to close our second round, hit 9/11, and that really cashed us out. But we made every mistake in the book. And I went from, being one of the young up-and-coming executives touted by all the local magazines to being, to bartending for a living, being $50,000 in credit card debt. So I can totally relate with you. And the fact that you've gone through that, the fact that you've made that mistake and recovered and then built yourself up again, that resurrection, if you will, to me, that gives you a whole different level of credentialing. Don't you agree that that is like, once you've been through that once and you've said, wow, I can do that, I know how to survive that, that you get a muscle in your head that allows you to do things that a lot of people just can't make it through sometimes?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. It's funny. I read one time that CEOs or people that are successful the first time out, they rarely can duplicate it a second time.
Right.
And the reason is the conditions under which they were successful a lot of times had a lot to do with luck and timing, but they think it's their brilliance.
Right.
And so the article basically was saying you learn a lot less by succeeding than you do by failing. And I absolutely think that's true. I mean, I count it as a blessing that the first thing that I did built large enough to make me excited about what's possible, but then slapped me in the face enough to understand that I wasn't as smart as I thought I was.
No.
But then you do have to be able to resurrect. And that's a good point because, a lot of entrepreneurs, they give this a try. And when it fails, they're like once bitten, twice shy, right? They'll never go back. And I just wasn't that kind of guy, right? I mean, I was the kind of guy that, to me, this was a bit of a game. And I don't mean to trivialize it, but it was a game that you play.
Right.
And the first time I played it, I won some games and then I lost.
Yep.
I lost the season.
I think you're totally right, Scott. Like all the guys that I talk to that have done this from a serial standpoint, and they may be worth 50, they may be worth $1.50, they may be worth close to half a bill, but they all talk in terms of plays. What is the play there? What is the play? And they've made it a game. They've really got to that point where it's become a game for them. And I don't think you're trivializing it at all. I just think you're acknowledging the fact that you're going to lose sometimes, and that goes with every game, right? I think that's the power of that mental structure that you pulled that out. I want to come back to you went to the Soviet Union and you started a software company. What happened from there?
Well, so I had read this book. In the book, it said that if you really want to learn a lot in business, you need to start a local company, then you need to have a regional company, and then you need to do an international company. I thought, well, that's a great idea. So I had basically, in the first company, I had built a local and a regional, play. And so I thought, well, the only thing left for me, of course, is to try international. So this is back in the late 80s. And I looked around the world and said, well, what country could I go try to do technology in?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the Soviet Union, no one was going there.
Right.
It was the Wild West. And I happened to find a peace group who had this idea that if they could take Americans over to the Soviet Union and actually create businesses, it would help foster peace.
Wow.
So they took 10 business people over to the Soviet Union and to set up meetings. And the Soviet Union at that time was just starting to write corporate law. Like they had no corporate law, so they're just starting to write it. And it was all joint ventures. So in other words, you could form a joint venture with the Soviet government to start a company as we would know a company.
Right.
And so I was the only one out of the 10 people that they took that actually started a company with the Soviet government.
Wow.
And so I did, and it's a long and fascinating story that somebody should have made a movie about.
I bet.
But at the end of the day, I was able to build a company there from 88 to 92.
Wow.
And then I sold it to the venture capital guys who had invested in it. And then I went on to something else. So, but it was an unbelievable experience.
So that something else was a couple technology companies beyond that. And then you got the consulting bug, which, it's like, so what possessed you to start to go from the build a company to now I'm going to sell my time for money kind of game?
It really is more not just building the company. I didn't want to run the companies anymore. So I still build one technology company at a time to this day, right? So, I'm building crowdscribed.com now.
Oh, wow.
And so I've always continued. I just don't want to run them anymore. And so what happened about 6-7 years ago was I decided that when you consult, you get to meet different people all over the world, different types of businesses, different kinds of companies. The learning curve is fantastic. You get to be a blessing to lots of different people. When I was building companies, I went in and I worked with the same 10 people or the same 20 or 30 or 50 people over and over again every day. I didn't get exposed to that much.
Yep.
And once I started to consult, I just was fascinated by how I got to learn so much about all these different businesses. And I love to learn and I love to help people. And I just I today believe I can help a lot more people consulting than building businesses. Now, I love the game,
right?
And that's why I continue to start companies and fund them and bring in management to run them and try to sell them because I like that game. But from a career standpoint, I'm much more fulfilled now by trying to help 50 companies at once instead of just building one.
Hey, Scott, hold on one second. We're going to cut here a little bit.
It automatically shuts off after 10 minutes, so he has to start over again where he's talking about
What is it on
consulting, because it's a DSLR.
It's a what?
It's a DSLR.
All right.
So start with
consulting.
Is a blessing.
All right. So I'm sorry, man. We went over our run rate here. So I'm going to pick you up at consulting is a blessing.
Okay.
And I'm gonna tee you up to kind of get you going because I totally apologize for breaking your rhythm because you were doing good stuff.
No problem.
And I think I've got a good thought to get you there to back in state. Okay. So I apologize. So I'm gonna tee him up and then we're gonna pick it up and cut from there.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So Scott, making this shift from going to running the company to the consultant side. I mean, I remember after coaching 1,000 people, like you get addicted to the impact that you make. And I think, is that what you're saying? Like, do you fall in love? Have you fallen in love with the impact you make in these organizations and that you can come in and, make that impact and get out? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of saying it. Although I don't always get out because sometimes they hold on to me forever.
Right.
But yeah, I love being able to help other folks succeed. And we have multi-billion-dollar clients. I mean, so we have clients that are really big organizations, some that are medium-sized organizations, but we impact thousands of jobs. And when we can help a client prosper because we teach them new things about how to use technology well. It's a blessing to that company for years.
Right.
And it's just really fulfilling to be able to do that. And it's, for me, it's a math game, right? I mean, if I can be fulfilled by helping 20 different companies this year prosper, that's more fulfilling than me building one for myself.
Right.
Right. And at the end of the day, for me, it starts to not so much be about the money.
Right.
I'm not as worried about building my own company and flipping it for millions and millions of dollars. If I can do really well financially, helping 20 companies prosper,
right.
It just seems like I'm playing a better role in the world.
Yeah, I get it. One of the things I really want to make sure that our audience has a clear understanding is the kind of consulting that you do, because Future Point of View is really a blue ocean play in the impact that you make with companies. It's one thing to help them take a technology to market, but I think you guys are even in technology adoption as a leverage. How do we utilize and use technology to drive the value proposition we're going to take to market in the future? Am I oversimplifying it or did I miss it?
No, it's a great question. What's probably unique about us is most technology consulting firms, they try to fix what software and hardware you have. And so their answer to better technology is, hey, let's upgrade your software or let's buy some new software or fill some holes. And we can do that when we do that for clients, but probably 60% of what we do is psychological. It's cultural. It's looking at what stops a company from being fantastic with technology. That normally is not the amount of money they have to invest or right. that they bought the wrong software. It is normally they have a culture that's too conservative, or right. they have a culture that isn't innovative with technology, or they have a business side that's fighting with the IT side.
Right.
Or they have leaders who are 60, 70 years old who never understood technology, so they don't know how to invest in it wisely.
Right.
Well, those problems are psychological. And so, we always say we're really good technologists with a high EQ.
Yeah.
Right. We understand people really well. And that's what's unique about us, I think.
I think one of the things that you guys solve that I think is brilliant is, and because I've been around this space now for 2 decades, and I'm a restaurant rat. I mean, I got into the technology game on accident. I mean, parents owned resorts. We had a restaurant, so I was totally technology illiterate. But one of the things that I realized early on is it's all about people, and getting people to behave differently. With technology is about learning how to adopt and use technology effectively for what it was designed for. And there were so many cases where people just ultimately are not using a tool. You know, they're like literally got the wrong end of the hammer trying to bang in a nail. And I think that's what you guys are hitting on with approaching it from the emotional IQ standpoint or from the psychological standpoint. It's you're helping them really get that utility out of it by understanding how the people have to change in order to utilize that. Is that close?
Yeah. Think about CRM. You know, that's a good example, right? You know, CRM, customer relationship management, is a critical technology tool today. It fails at about 50% rate when people buy it. In other words, it doesn't do what they bought it to do. About 100% of that time, it isn't that the software doesn't work, right? It's that the company had no idea how to get the salespeople to use it, or they had no idea how to use all the benefits of the CRM system. And so, you know, that is one of the big problems. Is technology is just a tool,
right?
I mean, it's just a tool, and so if you want to be world class with it, you have to look at who's the master behind the tool and how do they behave, and that's, you know, unfortunately, we've spent too much time thinking that just buying better tools make it better. Like, are you a golfer?
Yeah,
Tony?
yeah, for sure.
So you know, I golf. So it's the same thing. I can go rent clubs, and I play just about the same. I mean, I'm a fairly good golfer, and I can rent clubs and play just about the same. And you know, people think that, well, if I just spend $1,000 on the best golf clubs I can possibly buy, then I'm going to be a good golfer.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's the same way with technology. You know, if we spend a ton of money buying all the best technology, you know, that's going to make us good with technology. And it's not. No. It's the human, right, behind the technology.
Yeah, and some of it you just got to dig out of the dirt, right? I mean, like Ben Hogan said, some of it you just have to apply time in enough space to learn what you need to learn in order to get that tool to work for you. Because what the guys do with it on tour and what you and I do with it, it seems like totally two different games sometimes. And I think that's true with business too. There are businesses that are totally playing at a different level with technology than some of the companies that are, you know, are using CRM badly or using ERP badly or using some of these major platforms. They're using 1/5 of or 1/10 or 1/20th of what it's actually capable of. So when we're out in the marketplace and we're looking for what does your ideal client look like, Scott? If you could paint a picture of where you can make the most impact, size of company, type of culture, when do you know there's a great fit for you?
It's usually a company between, let's say, doing 50 million a year to a couple billion a year. So I'll call that mid-market. It's usually a company in that area. It's you know, normally a company that has a leader who wants to be aggressive. I mean, who wants to be top of their peer group with technology. You know, and then, you know, it's helpful if it's in an industry that we've done a lot of work in, obviously, right? I mean, we've done a lot of work with franchisors, with insurance firms, with banks, and so if it's in a space that we're real familiar with, you know, then that's a good thing as well. But, you know, honestly, really the number one thing is just, if the leaders are in a place psychologically and emotionally to spend the next few years trying to be top of their peer group with technology, then that's a great client for us.
So they got to be there psychologically for 3 years. I think that's so important that they hear, because cultural change doesn't happen overnight, right?
No question.
So got to be committed for the long haul. They've got to be in there for the long vision. Scott Klososky, you've been zipped.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks, man.